Hi everyone, my name's Mel. Welcome back to my bookshelf. So I finally did it. I finally finished Dune. So this little baby has been on my TBR for the last 2 decades. No joke, 2 decades. And so I promised myself, I was determined to finish it by the end of the year. And I did. And I'm just so happy that I finished it. So I finished it a few days ago now, and I've just sort of been letting it sit because usually by now I'd be onto another book, but I just needed to have a bit of a break and just to let it sort of fester, let my thoughts develop, talk to a few people about the book itself, and make up my mind about it. And next to read on my TBR is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, and I think that series is going to probably take up a lot of mental energy as well. So I wanted to get this video out before I even started something like that, just to get the slate clean. I didn't want this review to be tainted by thoughts of another book. So even though it's been put off a few times now, the movie Dune is actually coming out next year, and I wanted to read it before the movie came out, obviously, because I wanted to get my initial thoughts on it without picturing the actors in my mind whenever I read a page. And I want to tread carefully with my thoughts on this because I know that so many people adore this book, and it's number one on so many people's lists of sci-fi. I think it's the number one selling sci-fi in the whole world, and you can understand why. So I went into this a little bit in my review of The Sandman that I posted last week, but I really think it's important when you read a book, and I think sometimes that can be just as important as how good the book actually is, because when you are in your life can drastically influence the way that you feel about a book and what you take in from that book. And I think maybe if I had read Dune at an earlier age, I think I may have appreciated it more. That's not saying that I didn't enjoy it or appreciate it, which I did. I just think maybe at a different time in my life, I may have gotten to a deeper level with it. Might have appreciated it from a deeper place. Having said that, maybe now that I've read it, and maybe if I let it sit and develop in my mind, and if I read the subsequent novels, perhaps I'll enjoy it even more at a later time, and only time will tell. I've always heard that Dune is a very difficult book to get into, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've been putting it off for so long, is that I was intimidated by the reputation that it had. Because it was written in the 60s, like 55 years ago, I was expecting it to be aged, like more aged than it actually was. I was expecting the prose to be more difficult, and I was expecting the setting to be outdated and the characters to be old-fashioned. But that wasn't the case at all. And I think that's one of the things that I really love about science fiction, is that because it's set only in the limits of the writer's imagination, that it can be set anywhere, anytime, any place. And this book really, I don't think it really aged. I think that anyone could have written it from any time. I remember reading an old thriller book from the 80s, and I remember reading it thinking, oh my gosh, this is so dated. You know, they don't have mobile phones to call the police, they don't have pages, they don't have a way of communicating, the transport's outdated, there's no computers to look things up, everything's on paper. And I just remember thinking, gee, this is really old, it's really dated, even though it was a good book. But I feel with Dune that even though it was written so long ago, that you could have written it today. The technology, the characters, it sort of flows, and you sort of forget that you're reading a classic novel. I really loved the intricacies of the plot. So if you're not familiar with Dune, it's set 20,000 years or so in the future. In a nutshell, the book is pretty much based around a young man named Paul. So Paul's father is a duke, and his name is Leto, and his mother is the duke's concubine, Jessica. Now, Jessica belongs to this group of women called the Bene Gesserit, who are sort of this mystical group who have superhuman powers and abilities. Paul's mother trained him as he was growing up in the ways of the Bene Gesserit, to be able to have these special abilities that no other man has, because this group is all female. So the whole family relocate to the planet Arrakis, otherwise known as Dune. They relocate there when the Duke is put in charge of the planet by the Emperor. Now, Leto knows that the Emperor is only sending him there because he is threatened by Leto's power and influence, and he's a very beloved leader, and they know that the Emperor is just trying to get rid of him. But because of a lot of politics, he can't say no to this assignment, this appointment. But it just so happens that this planet is the only place in the universe that has a source of a substance called the spice melange. So this is where it starts to get interesting, because this particular spice is an addictive substance that has a lot of uses. So it increases a person's lifespan, allows the Bene Gesserit people to see into the past and future, and to get other people's memories. And I guess the main political thing is that this spice is required for interstellar travel. So the guild has the ability to travel to other worlds, but they have to use this spice. That's the only way that they can travel. And space travel has been the reason that humanity has been able to colonize other planets. So this spice is really the most important substance in the entire universe. And now the whole planet is in the hands of Paul's father. But the spice is really difficult to acquire. It takes all these giant mines, and the spice is guarded by these ginormous sandworms with rows and rows of sharp teeth. And these sandworms are like huge. They're bigger than buildings, they're bigger than skyscrapers. So when the Duke and his family are attacked by their rival, like a rival clan, Paul and his mother Jessica are forced to flee into the desert, and there they meet native people called the Fremens, and these people believe that Paul is the chosen one who will bring water to the planet and make it alive again, because the planet's desolate, it's all desert and there's no water. And that's all I'm going to say about the plot, because I don't want to spoil any more. Intricate doesn't even begin to describe this universe that Frank Herbert has created. There are so many things happening, and there are so many subplots and different little things going on, and little things that you miss until you think about it or have to read through it again. It is slow moving in a lot of parts, and a lot of the names of places and things are quite confusing on first read. You tend to sometimes get a bit lost. It also jumps sometimes mid-chapter from perspective to perspective, and sometimes it just feels a bit disjointed and a bit jarring. And sometimes you just lose track of who is the focus. I read the book, and I also listened to the audio version. And I found the audio version was a bit confusing, because sometimes the narrator would say the character in his voice, and then sometimes the character was a totally different actor. So it just got a bit confusing. You really had to pay attention to keep up. It's not one of these books that you can just let go in the background while you're doing other things. Like, you have to actually focus. So after I'd read the book, there's a bunch of appendices at the back. And after I read that, it made a whole lot more sense. So sort of by the end of the book, you can sort of grasp what's going on. So if you start the book and think, oh, I'm not going to be able to cope with this, I don't know where I am, pretty safely say that by the end, you'll have a good idea. So I must admit, towards the end of the book, I did look at a few videos on the Dune universe that were on YouTube. I will link the one I found most helpful below, but just be mindful that it is full of spoilers, not just for Dune, but for subsequent books. it goes into the family and the offspring of all the characters. If you like to be completely surprised and not spoiled, then I probably wouldn't have a look. But if you don't mind a bit more info, then I found it really helpful just to wrap my head around everything. And I think that spoilers for me is not so much an issue with something that's so big, because it's not about the spoils, it's about the journey of the book. So I really don't think watching the videos spoiled it in any way. In fact, I think that it really enriched my reading experience, because I was able to grasp the politics and things that I'd missed throughout the book, or that I just didn't quite comprehend, all just came together, and it actually really increased the rating for me watching those videos. Because of how old this book and how popular this book is, there are countless websites dedicated to analysis of each chapter and in context to the whole Dune universe. Something I really liked about this whole franchise is that you can go as deep as you want. If you just want to read Dune and skim across the surface and get a little idea of what's going on, you can. But then if you want to go deeper, there's just so many resources that are available to help you get under the surface and to really explore the massive universe that he's created. Like there's YouTube channels, there's books on it, there's websites, there's podcasts discussing it for, weeks at a time. So many resources out there. I think my favorite scene in the whole book was at the beginning. It was a dinner scene where the Duke and Jessica had a whole bunch of people over for a dinner. And just that scene made me realize how cleverly written this whole thing was going to be, and just how intricate and detailed it was going to be. It was only one scene in the book, but it opened up a lot of these characters and what they were thinking and what their motives were, and it was just a really integral part of the book that I just really found really enjoyable. I went back and I read it again after I'd finished it, just to see how much was exposed in that one chapter. Now I am really excited for the movie. I am really interested to see what they're going to do with it. I watched the trailer the other day, and I mean, you can't see much by a trailer because everything's just so intricate. I want to see how they handle the intricate parts of the plot, and I want to see the giant worms. So what would I rate Dune? It's really difficult, because I know that when I let it sit and if I read subsequent books, I'm probably going to increase my rating. At the moment, it's sitting about a 7.5 out of 10, but I really think that has the probability to go up. But as I said before, I really wish that I had read this book during a time when I was more open to the experience and to some of the themes that go into meditation and time and the present, future and past, and the relationships and the whole scope of the whole thing. It just didn't have that profound effect on me that it seems to have had to so many other people. I mean, I know that a lot of people didn't like it as well, but I was hoping that it would hit me a bit deeper. That's not to say that it won't in future. I was talking to someone about it the other day, and they were saying that it grows with you. So maybe it's not the end. But anyway, that sums up my thoughts on Dune, and I recommend that you give it a go if you haven't read it yet. You got nothing to lose, and even if you don't like it, you've got the movie coming out soon, hopefully, if it ever gets released, because it's been put off a couple of times now. Anyway, thank you for joining me for this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.